Good evening and welcome to our second Astro Talk for August, the bonus Astro Talk. It's the last talk before we're back at Muir Hall at the Royal Botanic Gardens. So we're very excited to be back there in September. Before we begin though, I'd like to say that in the spirit of reconciliation, the Astronomical Society of Victoria acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. The AAC loves bringing you these streams, and we couldn't do it without your support. So remember, if you're enjoying tonight's stream on Facebook, you can donate stars. On YouTube, you can donate stickers, and all donations, no matter how large or small, help us bring these streams to you. I'd also like to let you know that for our non-members and our members, we have a few events coming up. On the 22nd of September, we have a public viewing night at Caulfield Racecourse Reserve. Those who had their tickets from the previous event that was unfortunately cancelled due to poor weather, your tickets have rolled over if you requested them to roll over. We also have Sea Lake Astrofest coming up on November on the Melbourne Cup weekend. Don't think there's much accommodation left in Sea Lake, but there are still some tickets left for the events and for the viewing nights. So if you're keen to see the stars out at Lake Tyrrell and be shown objects through the night sky, be sure to grab a ticket to that. For our members, we have our Galactic Centre Star Party coming up on the 16th of September at the Leon Mao Dark Sky site, and tickets for those events are available on our website. With the formalities out of the way, let me introduce you to Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith. Lisa is an award-winning astrophysicist and author with a talent for making the universe accessible to all. She has published more than 50 research papers in astrophysics and played a key role in the development of the Square Kilometre Array and Australia's SKA Pathfinder telescopes. She's a member of the advisory group to the Australian Space Agency, the Questacon Board, a professor of practice at the University of New South Wales, and is the Australian Women in STEM Ambassador. Lisa also, I've already said she's an author, haven't I? So she's written many books, and one of those books she's here to discuss with us tonight, and that is the Universal Guide to the Night Sky. And tonight's a little bit different in that it won't be a presentation talk. It's going to be more of an informal conversation between myself and Lisa and you, the viewer. So we've got some questions we're going to have a chat to Lisa about. And if you've got any questions to ask, please pop them in the chat and we will absolutely get to them if we can. Lisa, welcome to the stream.
Hey, Mark. Hey, everyone. Nice to see you.
So I've just let everybody know that it's a little bit different. We're going to have a bit of a chit-chat and talk about you. So it's all about you tonight. And I thought I know it's all about I'm sure me. Sure you've done these before. So first off, you were born in Essex in England and you left school at the age of 11 and taught yourself at home. How did that happen? Yeah.
I think that's a bit unusual. Well, look, home education's a great thing. It's been around for a while, and I went to my local primary school, lived in a small village, and my mum ran the primary school in the next village, so she was the head teacher, and so I went to that school, and it was terrific, amazing, really, really great little school. But I went to a local high school when I was 11 and sort of had a look around. There wasn't much choice in terms of where you could go to school, so it was just really one place. And I noticed that they had a lot of gender segregation. They were like a lot of rules saying boys can't do this, girls can't do that, and everything was very scripted. And when I got home, I was sort of talking to my dad about this. And one of the main things was as well, like the school uniform, and that was very gendered, and the girls couldn't play football. And that was something that was really important to me. So I got home and discussed it with my dad. And he said, well, why don't you learn at home and just read books and discover things through osmosis through the world. And so I had the University of Life for a number of years, 11 till 16 years old. Didn't have any formal tutoring or teaching. Nobody taught me things. I just sat and read everything I could get my hands on. I went through the sort of workbooks that schools have and that kind of thing. And I played music, and I discovered poetry and philosophy and all the things that you can enjoy in terms of learning. And I discovered the night sky, and it was really part of that environment of openness and learning what I was interested in. And as a young kid who was starting to get quite obsessed with astronomy, actually, to really go deep into it. And I think that really helped me. Because as you know, there's not a lot of astronomy in the school curriculum. And
No,
I really benefited from being in that environment where I could just explore what I really cared about. That was terrific.
what you love. There's not a lot of astronomy in the school curriculum these days today, which is a little bit unfortunate. But saying that there's not a lot of astronomy in school, you joined your local amateur astronomy society in 1992, the Braintree Astronomical Society, and that's where you first learned to use a telescope. So I have a question of what was it like as a young woman joining a very male-dominated hobby?
Yeah, I was as I say, I was into astronomy, and all I had was kind of my eyes and this old Norton Star Atlas. It was a type of star atlas that obviously the internet didn't exist back then. Yes, kids, that's a real thing. So I just had this 1952 version of a star atlas, which was, kind of musty smelling and old and a bit moldy and had brown spots on it. So that was kind of my only connection to astronomy. So yeah, my dad found this little card in the local library, and it said Braintree Astronomical Society meets every fourth Wednesday of the month, or whatever it was. And yeah, so I went along. My mum took me to the next town. So it was quite a long drive. One evening, it was quite late, I remember, past my bedtime probably. And we had a lecture by one of the members on, I don't know, his, collimating his telescope or whatever it was, his little gizmo or something that he built in his back garden. And I just loved it. It went along, 12-year-old girl. It was just wall to wall, 70-year-old men. Like it was just, but I felt welcome. I felt really different from everyone else, but it was very much the old days. And we were in this old sort of telephone exchange building, like an old hall. And yeah, all these old dudes, and this 12-year-old girl kind of rocked up and said, "Hey, I want to do astronomy." And they were so nice. And we ended up doing loads of trips out to the telescopes, the observatories that they had. I got lent a telescope, 10-inch Dobsonian, I think it was. And that was just magical to learn how to actually use a telescope, the workings of it, how the sky rotated. And I used to look at stuff like Jupiter's moons and the Orion Nebula. I used to sketch the trapezium cluster inside the Orion Nebula, these 4 stars, and
Yep.
Inside the star forming region there. It's just things that you remember for a very long time. I remember seeing Saturn's rings for the first time, and just being completely overawed by the whole thing. So they often say you can't be what you can't see, but it's not completely true, because I think I had a lot of role models who maybe weren't like me, but were very kind to me and patient. But it must be very nice to be a member of something like ASV, because you've got such a big membership and such a diverse membership, and that's a lot more welcoming and safe for a lot of different people. So that's great.
It is a very large membership. I think we're nearly 1,800 members. And
yeah, we
you
were
are
like
one of the
10, 15 people sometimes. Yeah, it was a bit different.
It's hard to try and get something for everything though with that many members. We do our best, but so you used a telescope, unlike many astrophysicists. So you're a rarity in the field of astrophysicists, because most of them don't look through telescopes.
Well, a lot of astrophysicists were never amateurs, and for me, an amateur astronomer is the pinnacle. Professionals are just pretending, because we just do mathematics and computer programming, and you kind of point some telescope on a mountain or a giant dish somewhere at the sky, and then the computer does the rest. But I feel like amateur astronomers really understand it. It's like a classic car enthusiast, as opposed to just someone who drives a taxi for a living. Like it's the passion, it's the deep knowledge that I think is really special. And I feel really blessed to have been in both camps, actually, and really get that love of astronomy from my amateur days. I think that's really
like
special.
I like that you sketched things as well. We have a few
Yeah,
members
yeah,
that do the same thing, where they'll literally, that's all they do, is they get their Dobson in and they just look at objects, and they got books full of just sketchings of what they're
that's
seeing
it.
visually,
Yeah.
making
Well,
little
I kind
notes.
of yeah, I kind of learned that from Patrick Moore, who was a British amateur astronomer, very prolific writer, author, and broadcaster. And in his books, he used to have little circles that you could fill in, things like the planets, or just an eyepiece, and you could just sketch in what you were seeing. I did start astrophotography after that a little bit, and I really enjoyed that too. But I just loved having a pencil and just sketching the nebulosity of a cloud in space. It was just so magical, because maybe 2
Yeah.
years before that, I didn't even know clouds in space existed, and there I was peering at this gigantic region of complex molecular gas that's forming new stars, and that's so cool.
I love that a lot of people who see the large and small Magellanic Cloud for the first time are very much the same, not realizing that it's actually two other little galaxies, not just some cloud patches moving through the sky, because
Yeah,
you're just not used to seeing it. You don't know
that's
that
it.
they exist.
That's it. It's brilliant.
Now, I have a question on here. So, and it's what did Professor Lisa Harvey-Smith study? And that was actually my next question was, how did you handle the transition from self-teaching in your younger years to studying at university, where you got your master's in physics with honors in astronomy and astrophysics, and a PhD in radio astronomy?
Yeah, it was from that passion, I guess, going to the local astronomical society, not just a few times, but going regularly every single month for years and years, and getting really into astronomy. It was when I was still learning at home, actually, which I did till I was 16 years old. I really realized I wanted to be an astronomer. By then, there'd been professionals who'd I'll get a bit of music there, I like it. Um, yeah, I'd seen some professionals and speaking at the society, and managed to ask them some questions about what do I have to study to actually be an astronomer. And the list was obvious: maths, physics, chemistry, that kind of thing. Astronomy as a degree had some of the precursors, which were in the UK doing GCSEs, the exams you do when you're 16, and then A levels, which are the exams you do when you're 18. So went through those stages, and actually I found transitioning between learning at home and studying at college and then uni quite smooth, because I'd already been used to self-directed study. And I found that my peers who'd been to school maybe had been a little bit more structured, and that some of them did struggle with self-directed study, whereas I've been doing it for the past few years. So I was kind of used to that, and managing my own time and my own study load. So that was fine. I found it a good transition.
So from there, you spent time in Europe working before you headed over to the land down under to take on a role as a
Mm.
project scientist for the Australian Square Kilometre Array. What was that like, changing lifestyles, I guess, and then working on such a large project?
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I went from studying PhD at uni in Manchester to actually handed my PhD in on the Friday and started work in Holland on the Monday. Went to my first job there, and then came over 2 years later to Australia. And I'd never been to Sydney, and I actually accepted a job there. And it turns out it's pretty nice. So so that went well. Yeah, and I got the job at CSIRO a couple of years later on the Australian SKA Square Kilometre Array, and then the Pathfinder I worked on later. So it was this huge, giant project, $3 billion project, the SKA, this enormous global, audacious idea, really, to build the world's biggest and most powerful radio telescope. And not just a single telescope, but literally tens, hundreds of thousands of individual radio antennas, receivers, spread across Western Australia and South Africa, to really delve into the real mysteries of the evolution of our universe. So the cosmic history books of the last 13.5 billion years. And just working on something of such significance, it was really monumental. The teams were big. they were very diverse. They had a lot of engineers and project managers and infrastructure experts and people who, you know, work with communities and different stakeholders in the region, like mining companies and traditional owners and communities. And it was really, really interesting, a great learning curve for me as a scientist, that science isn't just, you know, sitting waiting for someone to build you a telescope and hand you a piece of software to magically do your project, but you have to be part of that construction and delivery and the development and design of all the different elements, all the expertise in supercomputing and data storage and transport, all the things that maybe sound a little bit boring and peripheral, but actually really fascinating when you think about it and when you're involved in it. So it was really such a good education in teamwork and collaboration and politics and all the things you don't even think, because someone has to pay for this telescope. And the money's coming from governments around the world. So it was a real education, a real eye-opener for me.
Lots of deliverables.
Terrific, yeah, deliverables, project management jargon.
Yep.
Good times, good times.
So when we were having a chat the other day, you told a story about how the process involved in going from Sydney to visit the SKA, which I found was quite interesting, and I think everyone else would find that just the process involved in getting out there just for a site visit.
Yeah, simple. You just drive to Sydney Airport, and then you fly for 4 hours, whatever it is, to Perth. That's taking you all day. So then you mostly stay overnight, or you fly immediately if you can get the evening flight to Geraldton, which is another hour north. And then you definitely stay overnight in Geraldton, which is a small town by the sea. And then you hire a mine-ready four-wheel drive, which is this real super-duper flashy four-wheel drive with all the safety gizmos and all the, 18 spare tires and 400 satellite phones and all this rescue equipment. And then you do all this really, really long safety checklists. You check every single component of the vehicle. You do loads and loads of prep. You go to the supermarket and you buy giant 5-litre tubs of water, several of those, food, sat phone, EPIRBs, first aid kits, and then you drive for 4.5 hours on dirt tracks out into the bush on dusty red roads, and there are giant monitor lizards walking across the road, and there are cows the size of a horse, like gigantic cows out there. This cattle station is where it's actually at, and just huge emus running around the joint. It's just an incredible experience, and you drive out 4.5 hours, get to Buladi station where you stay overnight. Next morning, again, 45-minute drive, and finally you get to a locked gate. And you can just see in the distance, when they were built, the 12 little dishes, actually quite big dishes. They're as big as a 2-story house, but 12 dishes, antennas in the desert of the Australian SK Pathfinder telescope. And that's the only kind of the hint that this huge scientific infrastructure is there, which you can barely see from the road, is a huge giant sign that says, radio quiet zone, please turn off your CB radios and mobile phones. So it's a radio quiet site. It's very, very remote, and it takes a long time to get there and a lot of effort, but it's definitely worth it.
Sounds like a trip for a lot of people. Now, we do have a question from Crystal Webster. 8-year-old Ethan would love to ask, what are the coolest stars in the Milky Way?
Oh, wow. You could mean cool as in not hot, but I don't know if you do.
I think it means cool as in like
just
the best.
Cool,
but
the best.
Why not both? Why not the coolest?
All right, I'll answer
the
both.
Coolest?
So I would say the coolest are the hottest. So I don't know, actually. Do you know what? I think the coolest are the coolest. Here we go. I think one of the coolest stars in both senses of the word is a very old red giant star. So something like Betelgeuse, one of the stars that's getting to the end of its life, and it's run out of the fuel that it uses to burn. It's almost running out of hydrogen in its core, which it turns into helium and shines. That's how it makes its light and heat. and energy, and that's how it stays a star. So when it's almost run out of that stuff, it starts burning different stuff, and it actually contracts and cools. Contracts in the center, gets hotter, and then it expands again. It kind of goes, ooh, because gravity pulls it together. The outer parts expand, and you get this huge sort of red giant star. And the outer areas are quite sort of expanded, so that they've cooled down. It goes very sort of reddy orangey color. And it'll only be sort of 3,000 degrees or something like that, as opposed to about 6,000 degrees for our star. So, it's cool. And it's also cool because it starts huffing and puffing towards the end of its life, getting bigger and smaller. And you start getting variability in the star's brightness. And you start getting some weird behavior.
And
so I think
scientists get worried. Scientists get excited that it's going to explode. They think
well,
it's exploded, and then it hasn't.
yeah, it's not exploded yet.
Not yet.
But when it does, you might want to go and put some alfoil around your head or something, because it's not going to be good news for us.
It's not going to be fun for astronomers at all, is it?
No, I don't think so. No. So I think cool stars are pretty cool, because they can do some funky stuff, and if they're smaller stars, they can turn into planetary nebula as well, which is what our sun might do at the end of its life, but we're not quite sure. And that's where all the gas in the outer part of the star expands into space and starts getting shone on by the starlight, and turns all beautiful colors. So all of those
Pratt
things.
Nebula and Helix Nebula and
just so many. Ring Nebula,
Dumbbell Nebula.
Yeah,
Ring
gorgeous.
Nebula. Yeah.
Gorgeous
Lots of planetary nebulas in the sky to look at.
Yeah,
Right now,
gorgeous.
in the southern hemisphere at the moment, there is a lot of planetary nebulas up at the moment. Meredith has just noted that it feels like we need one of those four drives to get anywhere dark enough to get Saturn's opposition shots this week, or anywhere without clouds as well would be good. That's for sure. It's not been good weather in Australia at the moment. Now, just moving on from your coming in to do your work with SCAR, you're also now the Australian government's Women in STEM ambassador and professor of practice at the University of New South Wales, and you work to drive gender equity in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education careers on a national scale. How did you get involved in Australian Women in STEM? And I know I asked you this question the other day, what's the field of STEM beginning to look like for women in STEM? But I still think it's a very important question to ask.
It's an interesting one. Some people might think, well, what does a Women in STEM ambassador do? But, we see it in the figures. Even this week, there was a really good article in the newspaper that I commented on in Sydney Morning Herald the other day, just showing that things like, although we're getting towards parity in science and math study at year 12 between young men and young women, there's still a lot of inequity in a lot of subjects. So engineering and IT, huge number of young men study that at year 12, hardly any young women. And when you look at the science curriculum, so the actual curriculum dictated by the states and territory education authorities, the science curriculum hardly mentions any women, even though hundreds of thousands of women work in science and make discoveries all the time. We still kind of get this old, in schools, we get this old sort of boring way of teaching science that's been the same for hundreds of years, which is that you teach about the discoveries of white men from Europe, and that you ignore anyone else from anywhere else in the world, and you've put those discoveries at the forefront, and you don't mention any contribution by anyone else. And that's culturally wrong. It's just incorrect. It's culturally insensitive, and it doesn't reflect real science and who does science. And of course, it's gendered. So, frankly, why in the year 2023 are we still teaching young people that the greatest discoveries in science were all done by men? They were all from Europe. It's just rubbish. We know all great mathematics comes from originally from the Middle East. We know that Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people in this landmass that we're on today have been doing science for tens of thousands of years. We know that Indigenous peoples all over the world have passed down and created and curated knowledge for tens of thousands of years. So it's just so boring and so straight to just say, oh, all this stuff was done by Maxwell and Newton, and that was the only stuff that was ever important. So anyway, all this stuff, very important that we recognize that science is a team sport, and that everyone should have a place in science and technology. Um, STEM as a whole, science, technology, engineering, and maths, it has a lot of variation in who feels safe and who actually takes part. There's a lot of ways that people are excluded from STEM. Like when I went to university, I walked into my lecture theatres, and often I was the only woman out of dozens and dozens of students. I was taught by absolutely no women in my entire degree, and it was a modular degree, so I had dozens of different lecturers. They were all men, and you know, there were incidents where your gender is actually mentioned and made the butt of jokes and insults, and you just start feeling, well, you don't belong. You don't belong. I managed to persevere in that environment, but it's, why should you need to persevere? Why should you need to fight against the system? So we just need to make the system better, both in education and in careers. We know that women experience sexual harassment more often than men do, although anyone experiencing it is very important to tackle. So it's really about making education systems better. It's about making workplaces better, and that means better for everyone, because nobody likes a toxic workplace. Nobody likes systems and structures that stop you doing great science, whoever you are. Nobody wants half the human population to be excluded from engineering for some unknown reason. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, my role is to sort of work with the government, do research, create tools, projects, advice, and really help create a better STEM ecosystem so everyone can participate equally. And that's a big job.
Is that part of that Include Her STEM? I've noticed there's a lot of Include Her STEM being pushed around social media at the moment.
Yeah, that was the report that came out this week. Yeah, it's a really good one. It's led by Dr. Kat Ross, and an astronomer. And yeah, she's led this work for a little while, and we chatted about it for the last couple of years. You know, but she's done all this research, and with her colleagues, found that the curriculum is so skewed against women's achievements and discoveries. Even Marie Curie, who got 2 Nobel Prizes, she's the only person to do that. She wasn't mentioned in certain curricula. It's just egregious, and it's ludicrous nowadays to not even notice this. Is incredible when you're creating a curriculum and you're trying to create a world where people feel not excluded. And you know,
welcomed.
a friend and colleague of mine who is an Aboriginal woman from New South Wales, and she said her daughter had also come home from school complaining that not only were women not included, but you know, the achievements of Indigenous, First Nations knowledge holders and scientists were not acknowledged either. And again, it's just not good enough. It's just incorrect to present such a skewed view of reality to kids.
I would agree, and that sort of leads into, I guess, this is all part of the Future You Australia. Is that linked in with that, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so as part of my role as Women in STEM Ambassador, I get a grant from the government to do the work that I do, and to build teams to do research, but also to run programs. And our great program for young people is called Future You. futureaustralia.com.au. You can actually go on the free website paid for by this grant. So it's all free. It's all curriculum linked, and it's for young people aged upper primary to, you know, middle grades in high school. So you can go to that website, futureaustralia.com.au, and you can see amazing stories of real people working in STEM, and it shows a diverse range of people and pathways, and shows young people how they can use science and technology, engineering and maths knowledge and skills to do different career paths. It shows you that you don't have to be this genius. You don't have to work in a lab coat. You don't have to go through university. all those stereotypes that we have about science. You can go through vocational pathways. You can go to TAFE, you can go to colleges, you can do micro-credentials, you can do career changes in the middle of your life, but you can get into STEM wherever you are. But STEM's really important, but it's not just a fad. It's all the studies show, all the economics research shows that STEM is becoming really, really important for everyone in pretty much every job. It's growing 1.5 to 2 times faster than any other types of careers. So it's really important that we learn these skills and give our young people the opportunity to see role models who look like them and who have lives like their lives. So we can show everyone that STEM's for everyone. So yeah, jump on that side. It's really great.
I've been having a look through it. There's a lot of stuff in there for teaching as well. So a lot of guides, stories. Yeah, there's a lot of resources in here. A lot of good information, which is all very, very exciting. I've passed it on to a few people already. As I mentioned, I should also pass it on to my daughter as well, because I know she'd find it all very interesting. I've got the website scrolling across the bottom. Before I move on to the next question, which is about the book, we have a question for a beginner. How would you explain dimensions of space?
Well, you're talking about 22-dimensional space, the theoretical curvature of space into tiny dimensions, or I mean, we know all about 3 dimensions maybe you're sitting on a sofa, or maybe you're sitting at a desk or in your bedroom, whatever. There's up and down, left and right, back and forth. The 3 dimensions we know. There's time, the 4th dimension. And then, theoretical physicists just go nuts with mathematics, and they just decide that, well, if we actually imagine that there are more dimensions, but they're actually curled up really small and we can't see them, and that's a bit of a strange leap, but then certain things fall out, and maybe that we can explain the way that tiny particles work. Maybe we can explain the way gravity works. We can explain things in describing the weird way that light and particles behave as a wave and a particle and things like that. Really strange stuff in quantum mechanics. So it's just kind of an idea that there may potentially be more than the dimensions that we see, and that particles are manifestations of things happening in those dimensions. But hey, no one's proved it yet, and no one's disproved it. So it's just one of those fun ideas that we can all enjoy thinking about, and go when our brains explode.
It is a bit like that.
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
One last little comment for you from David Wilbur. My 7-year-old daughter is passionate and excited with anything to do with science. I love what you do to improve young female students' participation in STEM. Thank you, Professor Harvey-Smith, for making science cool for the likes of my daughter.
Oh, that's a lovely comment. Thank you very much. And I'm sure you do that too, David.
Makes it all worthwhile, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's lovely, and that's why, when I was before my current role, when I was just doing astrophysics, I love writing the books that I write, because it's just that creative outlet, and it's that ability to inspire. That word's probably overused, but to really connect with people, not just young people. I write books for adults as well, but people who may not love astronomy, they may be just learning about it, they may have never seen it before. Young people discovering that there's stuff out there that's so unknowable and unimaginable. I just love that. I love that. Speaking
of books, this is the main reason we're here tonight, is your new book, Universal Guide to the Night Sky.
Oh my God, there's
which
a
picture.
Is out now. That's the moon.
So it's on that side of it, yeah.
That one.
There's a moon on
it's
one
hard
side.
To do. This virtual background
it's
thing.
on that side, yes.
Somewhere over here.
Tell us a bit about your new book.
I mean, it launched yesterday, and that's really exciting. It's my 6th book. It's published by Thames and Hudson. They're a great Australian-based, Melbourne publisher, but they're global as well, so being published around the world, which is terrific. And it's illustrated by Sophie Beer, who's a very talented author and an illustrator. And look, it's for kids in primary and high school. It's actually great for adults as well. A lot of adults say, I actually read your kids' books to my kids, and then I read it myself when they've gone to sleep. And I learned so much about it. So, you know, I really think it's actually good for anyone. It's illustrated. It's got a bunch of fun facts and breakout boxes. It talks about the night sky and how to actually observe it, what you're going to meet there, what are the different kinds of objects you can see in the night sky as a beginner or as someone who's learning more. And it just takes you through just the wonders of the night sky. But it's called the Universal Guide because it's really important to me as someone who came from the Northern Hemisphere and learnt the stars there, and then came down to Australia and noticed things like the moon's upside down, you know, and the stars are different. Whoa. That there's a book for everyone. Because I notice I go in a lot of bookshops here in Australia, and there'll be books that just talk about the Northern Hemisphere sky. And I just think that's such a con. This shouldn't be in the bookshops here unless, you know, they've got a bit of a disclaimer, because people are buying these for their kids and they're showing them all the northern constellations and then they can't see them. It's This is deliberately designed for anyone in the world. It's all about the entire night sky. It's got the constellations on the front, just little Cassiopeia, northern one, and the Southern Cross, the southern one, just to show that it's really talking about everyone's night sky, the night sky we all share.
So what's in it? Like, what's in the book? Like, is it talk about
so we've got
modern forms of astronomy as well as traditional forms, or?
Yeah, we've got sort of where the Earth is in space, and talking about stargazing, and of course, you know, how to do it, what you can see. But it also talks about the tools. So, you know, a lot of books just show you here's Jupiter, here's Mars, etc. But I've got stuff about the apps that you can download on your phone, and you can point your smartphone anywhere in the sky, and you can actually see exactly which stars are in front of you and which galaxies and which planets. So those apps. We talk about things like Stellarium, which is a free website that anyone can use, and they've got apps as well that you can download. And they're really great for stargazing. They can tell you what's coming up, what events are happening, things like meteor showers, where you see loads of shooting stars all on the same night. You know, the International Space Station flying over. So we really talk about a lot of technology in the book, and the things you can use on your phone, on your computer, and how you can take photographs with your phone camera as well. And I know you're a big fan of that, Mark.
I am a very big fan of that. I do a lot of astrophotography, as I call it.
I like it. I've never heard that one.
Astrophotography, yep. I'm enjoying mic dropping the astrophotographers with my deep sky images.
I bet. How do you do that?
I have a pretty fancy telescope that I've got secondhand, and I have a phone holder, a very sturdy phone holder. I've tried all the plastic ones; they're no good. The metal ones are better. And I literally hook my phone up to the eyepiece, and I have an
straight down the barrel.
Straight down the barrel. I have an app that I use called Deep Sky Camera that does all my photos in RAW, and I can do it like a digital SLR or an astro camera.
Awesome.
I want 500 shots at 55 seconds, and it'll just take those shots when I don't have to touch it. And then I process it the same way through stacking programs and Photoshop at the end. It's good fun, and I do it because I like to show people that you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on equipment. If you've got a telescope that you can track with and a $50 phone holder, you can do what I do. And
it's great.
Camera app, best app, agreed. It is a wonderful app. We do have a question for the best app for the night sky. What is the best app for the night sky?
It's very controversial because there's loads of great ones. My current one that I like is Sky Guide, but there really are. I don't get paid by these companies, by the way. I just like that one. And look, I do use Nightcap camera. So I find that
Yeah,
if you're not using a telescope, you don't need the high resolution stuff. You don't need to download
exactly.
it
Yeah.
in raw format. That's a really good one. But you can go to websites like Spot the Station and find the International Space Station where that's going to be. You can find it on your apps, Sky Guide, Star Walk. There's absolutely loads of them.
Yes, Sky
S-
Safari,
yeah,
Stellarium. Yeah,
they're all great. Stellarium, fantastic. Sometimes they're a little bit better when you pay the $5 or $4 or whatever it happens to be, as opposed to getting the free version, if you can afford that. So that's a good tip as well.
yeah. All right, we have a question from 10-year-old Maddie. Would like to know if you could name a newly discovered comet, anything at all, what would you choose? And there was a comet named recently, a new one discovered. I think within the last few weeks there was a new one.
I would call it.
I think the guy named it after himself. So.
Oh yeah, well that's a bit boring, isn't it? I'd call it Sam Kerr. What do you reckon?
I like the idea of Sam Kerr.
Yeah, Comet Sam Kerr. Let's do that.
yeah, because she just fires rockets in, so it's like a
there you
comet
go. It's like very
the
comet-like. There you go. I like that.
There you go, Maddie. We should call it Sam Kerr. Now, is there anything else you'd like to talk to us about the book? Is there anything else in the book that we should keep an eye out for?
You know what? There's one thing, and not everyone can look at the night sky. Some people have blindness or low vision, and there are some great ways to sonify the night sky. In other words, make it into sound. And I've got some examples of that in the book as well. So if you can't see the night sky, you can listen to it, and you may just enjoy listening to it anyway, even if you can see it. So there's some really unusual stuff in there that you can delve into. You can explore high resolution maps of the moon and Mars. There's just a bunch of really cool stuff. So yeah, maybe unexpected things, how to look at the sun and sunspots, how to maybe Victorians, you can look, and Tassies, you can look at the aurora borealis, australis, going back to my childhood there, the aurora australis, the southern lights, and just really how to do all those things, how to keep up with Facebook groups about what's happening in terms of solar activity, all that modern stuff that you don't necessarily learn in your textbooks.
There is a very cool website that monitors the sun. I can't think of the site off the top of my head, but it's got all of that information. It could be, yeah. But it's got all that information on there about everything that's happening on the sun.
There's some great sites, and coronal mass ejections flying off in every direction, and there's a lot of great people out there, and certainly Facebook groups are really good if you're looking out for the aurora or something like that.
Yes, aurora hunters.
I'm sure you do loads of stuff about what's going on in the night sky as well.
We have a page on our website that has, under the events, that has all of the major events that astronomy clubs around Australia are hosting. So doesn't matter if you don't live in Victoria, there's information on there about events happening all around the place. And yes, from an ASV point of view, there's a lot of people that will say, skies are clear, go and get your gear out, go and set up and do your imaging. All our little sections, all our little groups all look after each other, that's for sure, yeah. And we try and keep the public abreast of what's happening as well, except for when it's cloudy like it is tonight. And then
you can still get the full moon or almost full moon punching through. Blue moon, as they call it. I don't like that stuff. All that moon nonsense. I don't like that.
the super moon.
There's nothing super about it.
Not that super.
It's just the moon.
Don't have the heart to tell the people sometimes that.
I try not to be grumpy about it.
You're talking about if you're vision impaired and you can listen to the sounds. Have you, or do you know of any sort of Braille inspired star maps and things like that? I know the ASV was looking into it.
And there was one woman in America who made a Braille, I think it was a Braille book about astronomy, and it may have star maps, but actually real gap in the market there. So I think it's, if you are an expert in that, I think that would be a good opportunity for you to publish one, because I'm only aware of one book, and I think I'd reference it in my book, but it's certainly available online. But there's a bit of a lack of Braille astronomy books as far as I can see. But the sonification websites are great. You just go in your search engine, type in sonification night sky, or Sounds of the Night Sky might get you there. And there's a bunch of different ones, and it basically goes through all the colors and textures of a map of an object in space, so maybe a gas cloud or a cluster of stars, and it makes it into sounds, and it's incredible. It's one of those sounds, where if you go into a shop that sells smelly candles and those sort of hippie shops, that kind of sounds, that's the kind of music you get in there. Lots of tinkling and that kind of thing. It's very nice. It's very interesting.
They did that with Jupiter's rings, I think. They personified Jupiter's rings as well. We have another question for you. It's an important question. Best cosmic movie, Contact, Arrival. What's your favorite?
Oh, I love Contact. Yeah, because I went to, when I was a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Sydney, I was doing some big surveys of the galaxy, and looking at all the gases in the galaxy. We went to Arecibo, the radio telescope, which was unfortunately destroyed a couple of years ago. So
no more, yeah.
Pile of rubble. But at the time, it was the world's biggest telescope, 100 meters across. And went out in the jungle in Puerto Rico, spent 2 or 3 weeks there just observing with a telescope. Anyway, the film Contact with Jodie Foster, which is a terrific film, it's quite old now, but that was actually partly filmed at the Arecibo Observatory, and I was staying in one of the little wooden huts on the telescope site where the astronomers sleep at the time, watching the film. And one of the huts came up on the screen in the film, so that was really exciting. Of course, I love The Dish, the film about the Parkes Radio Telescope, and I've watched that many times with my colleagues at The Dish. And yes, they do have a real cricket stumps painted on The Dish. If you've seen that film, that's another great Australian classic, I think.
Yeah, very good movie, and they've got cricket stumps on our 8.5 meter dish as well, in honor of the dish, the main dish.
Oh, that makes me
happy. They also have played cricket on it as well before they set it up. Yeah,
8.5 meter.
8.5 meter dish.
I hope they weren't too heavy.
No. Be
pretty
solid dish. It's a pretty good dish.
Yeah, so. That's good. That's good.
Well, I think we've, I've run out of questions anyway, and I know that it looks like we've gone through all the questions from the public at the moment. So I'm going to thank you for joining us. It's been a wonderful little impromptu, well, not so much impromptu, but bonus Astro Talk for us to have you along. Now, your book is available. I had the banner up before. We'll pop it up again. It is available in all good and bad bookstores, but best to buy it from lisaharveysmith.com/bookshop. Is that right?
It is, because, and it's not just because I will, send you the book, but I will personally sign it. I will write, a little box, you can write your message. If it's for you, dear Mark, keep looking up, enjoy the night sky. I'll write a little message and sign it for you. But if it's for children, I give them a little inspiring message about their future and hopefully give them something to keep for the rest of their lives. So it's a nice little touch, I think.
Well, there you go. If you haven't got Lisa's new book yet, lisaharveysmith.com/bookshop, and then in the notes write, dear Mark, so that I get the message.
If your name's Mark, yeah.
If your name's Mark, even if it's not, but dear Mark.
I just write dear Mark in all of them.
We'll get it right eventually. But yes, if you want a book, eventually it'll get to me. If you'd like Lisa's book, please go along to our website and grab yourself a copy. We do have some copies being sent to us to give away as prizes at the Sea Lake Astrofest in November. So if you're coming along to that, you might get an opportunity to get not a signed copy. You might get an opportunity to get a copy of that book at the Sea Lake Astrofest as one of the prizes for a couple of the events that we've got there. We might be giving some away at the public viewing nights. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for this evening's stream. And I want to thank you again, Lisa, for being here with us. It's been wonderful sitting and having a chat to you. It's very different to how we do our Astro Talks, but I like this idea as well. So every now and then chuck in something like this, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more casual, and just having a chat. We hope everyone enjoyed the stream tonight, and we look forward to seeing you all in September. It'll be late in September due to some clashes that we've got in September. So I'm not entirely sure on the date of the next one, but I think it'll be either the second or third week of September. And if you want to go to one of our events, head onto the website. All the links are there. Click on one of the lovely pictures as it scrolls across the top for the event that you'd like to go to. And thank you for watching tonight's stream. And if you're not following us or Lisa on Facebook, click the like button on both pages. And we'll see you next stream. And again, thank you, Lisa.
Cool. See you, Mark. Bye, everyone.